The docking station floated like a shining crown above the blue curve of the planet. Thousands of lights blinked against the dark of space, each one belonging to a ship or machine. The Illyri had built this place. It was not human hands that shaped the enormous walls of metal, nor human minds that designed the gravity rings or the plasma bridges. Humans were only guests here, allowed to walk the lower decks, to learn a little, but never to touch what truly mattered. And yet, in all that noise and motion, in the proud shining hub of a species that commanded the stars, Kailari's attention fell on something small. She saw him. He was just one man, bent over a panel, fixing a simple airlock seal with old-fashioned tools. His hands were strong but scarred, his jumpsuit smeared with grease. His name tag read Daniel. To her kind, he was nothing special, just a human maintenance worker here only because the Illyri allowed it. But Kailari stopped walking. Her silver skin caught the glow of the lamps, her tall frame towering over the passing engineers. Her eyes, clear and pale like liquid glass, remained fixed on him. Why? She didn't know. The Illyri built starships. They commanded energy and thought with precision no other species could match. Their lives were long, disciplined, unbroken by the chaos of lesser beings. And yet Kailari had always felt hollow. She excelled in science, yes. She passed every trial her people set before her. But when she stared at the cold perfection of their machines, she felt something missing. She wanted to see life unmeasured. She wanted to see someone fight against limits, not just follow them. And when she saw Daniel tighten every bolt like the universe depended on it, she felt the smallest spark inside her chest. He wiped sweat from his brow, muttering under his breath as though speaking to the machine itself. The humans worked with their hands. They bent, strained, cursed, and laughed at their mistakes. It was messy. It was crude. It was alive. Kailari's steps slowed until she stood only a few paces from him. He didn't notice her at first. His eyes were fixed on the stubborn seal that refused to close. He pressed his wrench, twisted, cursed again, then forced the bolt into place. The sound echoed sharp in the metallic hall. Finally, he let out a satisfied sigh. Then he looked up and froze. She was still watching. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Kailari, tall and gleaming with her silver skin, her robes flowing like light itself. Daniel, rough and tired, holding nothing more than a wrench in his human hand. He almost dropped it when she spoke. You, human. Her voice carried a strange music, soft yet sharp like water cutting through glass. Daniel blinked. Yes? Do you fear me? She asked. The question came out too quickly, too raw. She had not planned it. But she needed to know. Daniel stared at her, confused. Most humans in the dock would have bowed or at least stayed silent. The Illyri were higher, stronger, untouchable. But this man, he just laughed. Not mockingly, just nervous. Should I? He asked. Kailari tilted her head. Her kind were used to worship or obedience, not questions. Yet this human didn't shrink. His eyes searched hers, not with awe, but with curiosity. Why do you smile? She pressed, leaning closer. Daniel wiped his hands on his jumpsuit, still grinning faintly. Because you're talking to me. Her people had warned her never get too close. Humans are unstable. They break rules. They break hearts. But Kailari's heart was already leaning forward. There was something reckless in him. Something she wanted to see burn brighter. The noise of the dock carried on around them, machines roaring, engines glowing, but for a moment it felt like silence stretched between just the two of them. Kailari finally whispered, I want to know what makes you strong. I want to see if your kind endures as mine does. Daniel frowned, half amused, half wary. What, you want me to take a test or something? Her pale eyes locked onto his. The spark inside her chest grew warmer. She should have turned away. She should have walked back to her people and left him to his bolts and grease. But instead, Kailari leaned even closer, her voice low and trembling with a hunger she had never spoken before. No, she said. I want to test you. Daniel blinked again, completely unsure if she was serious. But Kailari already knew she was, and that was how it began. Daniel could not stop staring at her. She stood tall, glowing faintly in the neon light of the dock. Around them, people hurried with their tasks. Humans in their plain jumpsuits, Illyri in their flowing robes of pale silver. But somehow, none of it seemed real. Only she did. Her name, she finally told him, was Kailari. She spoke it softly as though sharing a secret. For her kind, names carried weight. They were not meant to be spoken lightly to outsiders. Daniel repeated it awkwardly. Kyle-Ree? Her lips curved faintly, closer than most. There was something in her eyes when she looked at him, a mixture of pride and hunger. Not hunger for food, nor even for power. It was the hunger of someone searching for something they had lost long ago. He shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. So, what exactly do you mean by test me? Because that sounds like the kind of thing that ends badly. Kyle-Ree's voice was calm, but inside her pulse raced. It is not a trick. It is curiosity. My people have rules. We study, we build, we endure, but we are told never to look too closely at humans. Too wild, too unstable. Daniel smirked faintly. Sounds about right. She blinked, surprised by his honesty. And yet, she continued, I see you work with hands instead of thought. I see you fight stubborn metal as though it were alive. I see you smile even when nothing smiles back. He tilted his head. And that makes you curious? Yes, she whispered. There was silence between them, heavy and fragile. Daniel's grin faded into something more thoughtful. And what happens if I say no? If I don't want to be your experiment? Kyle-Ree hesitated. Her people never hesitated. They always knew their path. But this was different. This was new. Then I will walk away. And I will not ask again. Daniel studied her for a long moment. His heart beat faster than he wanted to admit. There was danger in her eyes, danger wrapped in beauty and mystery. But there was also something else. Loneliness. He sighed. You're not going to tell anyone about this, are you? No, she said firmly. This stays between us. He rubbed the back of his neck, still holding that grease-stained wrench. All right. Let's say I agree. What kind of test are we talking about? A math quiz? A push-up contest? Do I have to outstare you until one of us blinks? For the first time, Kyle-Ree almost laughed. The sound that escaped her lips was small, fragile, but real. No, not so simple. My people test their young with storms of thought, with trials of memory and silence. Few pass, many break. Daniel raised his eyebrows. Sounds encouraging. I do not want to see you fail, she admitted. I want to see if you can endure. If your kind holds something we no longer do. Her honesty hit him harder than he expected. He frowned. Why me? Kyle-Ree tilted her head, studying him the way one might study a star. Because you did not look away. When I asked if you feared me, you laughed. And that laugh has not left my mind. Daniel let out a shaky chuckle. Well, guess I'm honored. But inside, his thoughts raced. What was he getting himself into? This wasn't just a conversation anymore. This was dangerous. Humans weren't supposed to be part of Illyri trials. And if anyone saw them together like this, still something in her words stuck with him. You did not look away. He had grown up ordinary. No medals, no heroics. Just a man trying to survive in a world where humans were small, and the Illyri were vast. But maybe, just maybe, this was his chance to prove something. Not to her people. Not even to her. But to himself. Finally, he nodded slowly. All right, Kyle-Ree, I'll take your test. Her eyes brightened like distant stars. She hadn't realized until that moment how much she wanted him to say yes. A warmth spread through her chest, a warmth she hadn't felt since she was a child. Then it begins, she said softly. Daniel tried to lighten the mood. You're not going to, strap me to a chair and shock me with lightning or anything, right? Kyle-Ree looked at him seriously. If that is what it takes, his smile faded. Right, joking, that was a joke, but she did not smile. She only kept her gaze on him, steady and unwavering. For the first time, Daniel realized this wasn't a game. Whatever test she had in mind, it was real, and it was coming. He swallowed hard. Well, I already said yes, didn't I? So I guess I'll find out. Kyle-Ree nodded once. You will. The dock around them roared with life, engines screaming, lights flashing, humans and Illyri walking past. Yet in that moment, it felt like the universe had narrowed to two figures, one human, one alien, standing on the edge of something neither could fully understand. She had asked him the forbidden question, and he had answered with the forbidden word. Yes, and nothing would be the same again. The next day, Daniel found himself standing in a place no ordinary human had ever entered. The chamber was carved deep inside the Illyri station, hidden far above the human access decks. The walls shimmered faintly, alive with patterns of energy that moved like water. The floor hummed beneath his boots. Every instinct told him he shouldn't be here. And yet here he was, because he had said yes. Kailery stood beside him, tall and still, her glowing eyes reflecting the pale light of the chamber. She wore no robe today, only a thin silver weave that clung to her frame. There was no ornament, no crown of rank, only honesty. "This place is forbidden to humans," she said quietly. "If anyone discovers us, I will lose everything. You may lose more." Daniel's throat felt dry, but he forced a smirk. "Yeah, well, I've never been good at following rules." Kailery turned her head to look at him. The corner of her lips almost softened into a smile, but she did not let it stay. Her people were not meant for smiles. "This is not like your human games," she warned. "This test breaks even my kind. It will show you memories, it will strip away your defenses, you cannot hide from it." Daniel tightened his grip on the small wrench he still carried, a habit he hadn't shaken, even though it was useless here. "Sounds fun." "Fun?" Kailery echoed, tilting her head. "Yeah, scary fun," he said, though his chest burned with nerves. "Look, I don't know much about your fancy trials, but I know one thing. If you're asking me to try, then you must think I can handle it." Kailery hesitated. She had not told him everything. She had not told him how many of her own people had failed this trial, how many had screamed until their voices broke, how many had walked away hollow, never the same again. But when she looked at him, at his stubborn stance, his eyes that carried, no glow yet held so much fire, she swallowed her warning. "Yes," she whispered. "I think you can." She lifted her hand, pressing her long fingers against a crystal panel. The chamber awakened. Light spilled from the walls, curling into threads that floated in the air like glowing smoke. The hum deepened, vibrating in Daniel's bones. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice low. "Stand," Kailery said, "and endure." That was all. Just stand. Daniel stepped into the center of the chamber. The floor pulsed faintly under his boots. The light threads twisted around him, brushing against his skin like invisible fingers. He shivered. Then the storm began. At first it was gentle. The air thickened, heavy with warmth. Daniel blinked, and suddenly he wasn't in the chamber anymore. He was home. Green fields stretched around him, tall grass swaying in the summer wind. He was small again, no more than 8 years old, running with his brother across the fields. Their laughter filled the air. His mother's voice called them in for supper. His father's hands rested heavy and safe on his shoulders. Daniel's lips trembled. He wanted to stay here forever, but the storm was cruel. The light twisted again. The fields burned away, leaving smoke and ash. His father lay still on a bed, pale and cold, his chest no longer rising. His mother wept quietly in the corner. Daniel, older now, stood frozen, unable to breathe. "No," he whispered. "Not again." His knees bent, but he forced himself upright. "Not yet," he muttered. "I'm not breaking." Outside the chamber, Kailery's hands pressed hard against the barrier. Her glowing eyes widened as she watched him endure. The storm was not gentle now. The threads lashed at him, dragging out every memory, every wound. For an Kailery, this was unbearable after only minutes. Yet Daniel's body stayed standing. His fists clenched, his jaw tight, his heart burning with something Kailery could feel even through the glass. The storm shifted again. Daniel saw himself older, failing exams, losing jobs, standing in the rain while others walked past him without a glance. He felt the sting of rejection, the weight of loneliness. He felt the bitter nights when he wondered if he mattered to anyone at all. His chest heaved, sweat pouring down his skin, but he forced out words through clenched teeth. "I matter. I matter. I'm still here." Kailery gasped softly. None of her kind had ever spoken back to the storm. They accepted it in silence, or they broke. But this human, he argued with it. He fought it. And in that moment, Kailery understood something she had never seen before. Her people built starships. They bent energy to their will. They endured trials without sound. But this human carried something they had lost long ago. He carried defiance. The storm grew sharper, slicing through his mind like knives. It dragged, out the darkest corners, his mistakes, his guilt, the words he wished he could take back, the nights he cried when no one was watching. Daniel's body shook, his knees buckled. He dropped to one hand, gasping. Kayleigh pressed her palm harder to the barrier. "Enough," she whispered. "Enough." But the storm did not listen. It never listened. Inside, Daniel lifted his head. His eyes burned red from tears he didn't even realize were falling. His lips curled into something between a snarl and a smile. "You want me to break?" he rasped. "Then you'll have to kill me." His voice echoed in the chamber. The storm struck harder, but he forced himself up, trembling, swaying, but upright. Kayleigh's throat tightened. She had wanted to test him, but now she feared what the test would do, and still she could not look away, because this was what she had been searching for. Not perfection, not silence, not empty endurance, but fire. The chamber pulsed with light. Threads of energy danced and wrapped around Daniel like living fingers curling around his arms, legs, and chest. The floor beneath him hummed in low, powerful vibrations, and the walls seemed to breathe. Kayleigh's eyes glowed brighter than ever as she pressed her hands against the viewing barrier. She could feel every tremor of Daniel's body, every spike of emotion that the storm dragged out. This was the Illyri's most feared trial, a memory storm. A trial designed to peel back the layers of a being, to strip them bare and expose their soul. And yet Daniel stood. The first wave hit his mind. He was no longer in the chamber. He was a child again, running barefoot across green fields. Laughter filled the air as he chased his brother, whose small hands he could almost feel in his own. His mother's voice called them for supper. He felt the warm sunlight on his face, the safety of being home. But the storm did not linger on kindness. The fields shifted to gray ash. Smoke choked the sky. He saw his father lying still, motionless. His mother's cries pierced his ears, echoing in every corner of his mind. The pain of loss struck like a hammer and his knees buckled. Daniel gasped. "No." Not again. He remembered the night of the fire, the smell of smoke, the helplessness that had crushed him. He had carried that memory for years, wrapped tightly and hidden from others. The storm pulled it out as if it were a living thing, circling him and squeezing. Kayleigh's jaw tightened. Most of her kind would have fallen by now. The storm was meant to break even the strongest Illyri youth. And yet Daniel gritted his teeth and forced himself upright. I'm not broken," he muttered. The second wave struck harder. He was older now, standing in the rain outside the factory that had rejected him. Letters of failure, glowing red in his mind, faces of people he had trusted, who had turned away. Loneliness, humiliation. Every wound he had tried to bury clawed its way to the surface. Daniel's arms shook. His body trembled violently, but he refused to fall. He clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms. His breath came in ragged bursts, but he forced words past his lips. "I'm still here. I'm still alive." Kayleigh could hardly breathe. The storm had claimed many of her people, even the brightest. Few endured this far without losing themselves, yet here was a human. Smaller, weaker by every measure of strength, and he was fighting with everything he had. She wanted to call it off. She wanted to step inside the chamber, pull him free, tell him it was enough. But she did not. Her curiosity, her longing for something lost in her own species, held her back. The storm twisted again. Daniel saw nights he had spent alone, staring at the ceiling, asking himself if he mattered to anyone. He saw arguments, moments of anger he regretted, times he had failed to be brave. The storm dragged all these memories into the open, sharp and burning like knives against his mind. His body shook. He fell to one hand, gripping the floor for support. Sweat poured down his face and his lips trembled with exhaustion. Yet he lifted his head again, refusing to let himself crumble. You can't break me, he whispered to the storm. His voice cracked, but it carried an intensity that no energy, no memory, no force could extinguish. I won't give up. The storm responded with fury, lashing at him in waves that seemed impossible to survive. It clawed through his memories, tore at his body, and demanded surrender. But Daniel stood, wobbly, trembling, gasping, but standing. Kaelri's chest tightened. She had seen what her people considered endurance, what perfection looked like. And this human, this fragile, defiant, ordinary human, showed her something entirely new. Her eyes glistened with an emotion she rarely allowed herself. Pride, awe, something deeper, something she had buried under centuries of duty and discipline. Daniel's legs shook violently. He gritted his teeth. I am not afraid. I am human, he shouted, the words jagged, almost desperate. The storm pulsed with response, wrapping around him like a serpent, but he refused to bend. He refused to kneel. He was bleeding from a small cut on his forehead, his lips cracked, his skin slick with sweat, but his gaze never wavered. Kaelri felt a lump in her throat. She had sought to test him, to see if a human could endure what her own kind could not. But she realized now that he was not just enduring. He was teaching her. He was showing her what it meant to fight when the world says you cannot, to carry hope when everything is against you, to hold on to life when the storm wants to take it away. Daniel's voice cracked raw and ragged as he spoke again, louder this time. You think I'm weak? You think I'll break, but you're wrong. You'll see. I won't fall. The storm hesitated. It paused, almost as if surprised. Kaelri's heart raced. She had not seen a human endure like this. Not in stories, not in theory, never in reality. Her chest ached as she pressed her hand harder against the glass. Please, she whispered, please, endure. And he did. Minutes or hours passed, though time had no meaning inside the memory storm. Daniel's body shook, his mind screamed, but he did not collapse. Not once. Not even when the storm clawed at his deepest fears, dragging them to the surface like wild animals. Finally, the storm began to recede. The threads of energy uncurled, retreating into the walls. The humming floor quieted. The chamber dimmed, leaving Daniel on his knees, trembling, gasping, alive. Kaelri stepped forward, her voice trembling as she said, You survived. Daniel looked up at her, sweat dripping from his hair, eyes red, lips cracked but burning with life. A small, exhausted smile crept onto his face. I did, he said. Kaelri's chest heaved. Her hand fell from the barrier and she felt tears prick her eyes. This human, fragile and ordinary by every measure of her world, had endured what few of her people could. He had not only survived the storm, he had faced it with courage, defiance, and heart. For the first time, Kaelri realized something. Humans were not weaker than the Illyri. They were different, strong in ways her people had forgotten. And in that moment she knew she would never see humans the same way again. Daniel slumped onto the floor of the chamber, trembling from head to toe. The memory storm had receded, but its effects lingered like the echo of a distant scream. His chest heaved, every breath feeling like fire in his lungs. Sweat and tears mingled on his face. His hands shook so violently he could barely hold them together. Kaelri stepped closer, her tall silver frame bending slightly, glowing faintly under the chamber lights. She had never seen anything like this before, not among her people, not in the thousands of trials she had observed. Humans were fragile. That was what her people had always said. But Daniel was something else entirely. You shouldn't still be standing, she whispered almost to herself. Daniel lifted his head, bloodshot eyes staring at her. He smiled faintly, though it trembled. I don't know why I am, he said, voice shaking, but I'm not giving up. Kaelri pressed her hand against the transparent barrier that separated her from him. She could feel his exhaustion radiating like a pulse of life. She wanted to reach through to hold him, to tell him he had done enough. But her people's rules forbade touch with humans in these trials. Only observation, only endurance. The storm had done what no one expected. It had stripped away his memories, his pride, his comfort, and left him naked to the pain he carried inside. And yet, he had not fallen. He had not broken. Her throat tightened. She had brought him here to test a human, to see what he was capable of, but she had not anticipated how it would make her feel. She had not anticipated the pull of his courage, the raw, living pulse of determination that humans carried. Her people built starships, commanded the void, and endured perfect trials. Yet here was a human, bruised and battered, teaching her something she had long forgotten. Heart. Daniel tried to rise, shaking violently as his knees wobbled. His arms trembled under his own weight. He began, then faltered. The memories still haunted him. The loss, the fear, the nights he had spent wondering if anyone cared. Kaelri's eyes softened. "You don't have to," she said quietly. "It's enough that you survived." Daniel shook his head. "No, I have to keep going." His voice cracked, ragged with exhaustion. You brought me here to see if I could endure. I will endure. I will not let you see me broken." Kaelri felt a pang of fear, sharper than anything the trial could inflict. "I did not mean to push you this far," she admitted. I only wanted to see the truth. I never thought it would hurt like this." He looked at her, eyes blazing with determination. "Truth is painful, Kaelri, but it's better than lies. Better than hiding. Better than giving up." She swallowed hard. She had asked for truth, and here it was, burning brighter than the stars they sailed among. It was raw, imperfect, alive. Her own people had endured trials without complaint, without tears. But this human endured with feeling, with fear, with anger, with hope. The storm had tried to break him. It had clawed at his mind, dragged him through loss and regret, forced him to confront every scar he had buried. And still, he stood. Kaelri felt tears gather in her eyes. No Aeleri had ever faced the storm with such fire. None had argued with it. None had spoken to it. None had looked it in the eye and said, "I will not break." Daniel collapsed fully onto the floor, body shaking, but still alive. He tried to speak, but his words came in broken whispers. Why do you want this? Why test me like this?" Kaelri pressed her hand harder against the glass, wishing she could reach him. Her voice trembled as she replied, "Because my people build starships. We shape the stars themselves, but inside we are empty. I wanted to see if humans carry something more, something we have forgotten." Daniel's lips curved into a weak smile, the first real warmth in his expression since the storm began. "Then I guess you found it." Kaelri's chest tightened. She had found more than courage. She had found something deeper. Connection, understanding, a fragile bond that her own species rarely allowed. Don't touch me," she said softly. "It is forbidden." Daniel shook his head weakly. "Doesn't matter," he said. I feel it anyway. You see me. That's enough." Kaelri nodded, though her heart ached with longing. Her people would call her foolish. They would say she risked everything on a human who should have been ignored. But she did not care, because he had endured, because he had survived the memory storm when even her kind had faltered. He lifted his head slowly, sweat and tears streaking his face, and looked directly at her. "So, did I pass your test?" Kaelri's voice broke. You did more than pass. You reminded me why the stars matter." Daniel's lips trembled into a faint grin. "Guess we're both learning something, huh?" "Yes," she whispered. Her hands dropped from the barrier, but her heart felt full, overflowing with a mixture of awe, pride, and something like love, something her people had long taught her to suppress. The chamber was silent now. No energy threads, no humming floors, no lashing memories. Just two beings, one human, one Aeleri, connected by endurance, by courage, by fire. Kaelri knew that the trial was over. She also knew that nothing would ever be the same again. And Daniel had changed her world forever. The chamber was silent. Daniel sat on the cold metal floor, chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. His skin glistened with sweat. His hair stuck to his forehead, and his lips were cracked from shouting at the storm. Every inch of him ached. He had given everything he had, and yet he was still alive. Kaelri hovered at the glass barrier, her glowing eyes reflecting a storm of emotions she had long kept buried. Pride, fear, awe, and something else, something dangerous, longing. Her people would have called this foolishness. An Aeleri enduring a memory storm alone was one thing. A human, unthinkable, impossible, reckless, but she could not stop herself from staring, from feeling, from hoping. Daniel lifted his head weakly, blinking through the exhaustion. "I did it, didn't I?" he whispered. His voice was raw, trembling, yet there was a spark in it, a spark that refused to die. Kylrie's chest tightened. She pressed her hands against the glass, almost wishing she could reach through and touch him. Yes, she said, voice breaking softly. You endured what few of my people could endure. You survived. Daniel managed a faint, tired smile. Then I passed? You did more than pass, Kylrie replied. Tears gathered in the corners of her eyes. You reminded me what it means to live, to fight, to hold on even when everything is against you. He laughed weakly, a sound that came out more like a breath than a laugh. Guess humans do have something special after all. Kylrie's hand trembled. Yes, she whispered. Something my people lost long ago. For the first time, she felt vulnerable. Her species prided itself on perfection, control, endurance without weakness. But here she was, watching a human teach her about courage, about life, about heart, and the lesson cut deeper than any storm ever could. Daniel shifted slightly, his body trembling with pain and fatigue. He tried to rise, but his legs wobbled under him. Kylrie's eyes followed every movement, worried she might have pushed him too far. You shouldn't have been here, she said softly. The trial. It was meant only for my kind. I'm not your kind, he said weakly. I'm human. But I wanted to show you something. Something that matters, her throat tightened. And you have. You've shown me more than I ever expected. More than any starship. More than any achievement of my people. Daniel's lips trembled into a small smile. Then, maybe you'll let me survive your curiosity. Kylrie's heart skipped a beat. You already have. Around them, the chamber hummed faintly, the remnants of the storm fading like smoke after a fire. Daniel leaned back on his hands, exhausted. Yet there was a light in his eyes, a stubborn, unbroken flame. Kylrie realized something then. She had sought to test him, to see if a human could endure what her people had endured for centuries. But in truth, he had tested her. He had shown her that endurance was not measured by silence, by perfection, or by the ability to obey rules. It was measured by heart, by the will to live, to keep going, even when fear, pain, and loss threatened to crush everything inside. And Daniel had heart in abundance. Kylrie felt tears spill over. She pressed her hands against the glass, wishing she could reach him, wishing she could tell him everything her people had never taught her. She wanted to hold him, to keep him safe from the storms of the world, both inside and out. But she could not. Her people had rules, rules she had broken just by being here. Rules that could cost her everything, and yet, she did not regret it. Daniel looked up at her again, his chest still heaving, sweat streaking his face. You wanted to see if I could endure, right? He asked, voice rough but steady. I did, she admitted. And you have endured more than I imagined. You have endured with courage, with defiance, with heart. You are extraordinary. He blinked at her, confusion mixing with exhaustion. Extraordinary? Yes, Kylrie said. Her voice trembled. You survived the storm. You did not give up. You remind me of something I thought I had lost. Daniel swallowed hard, trying to process her words. And what's that? Hope, she whispered. The word hung in the air, heavier than any trial, brighter than any starship. Daniel's tired eyes widened slightly, and for a moment the exhaustion seemed to lift, replaced by something fragile and new. Hope, he echoed. I think I understand. Kylrie nodded slowly, tears streaking her glowing face. You have changed me. Not because of what you endured, but because of who you are, a human, flawed and imperfect, yet unbroken, alive despite everything. Daniel tried to rise again, shaking, but Kylrie held up her hand. Rest, she said firmly. You have done enough. He looked at her, faintly smiling through the pain. You really mean that? Yes, she said. You are enough. More than enough. For the first time in her life, Kylrie felt the warmth of true admiration, of connection, of something deeper than knowledge or achievement. She had watched the universe unfold, had built ships that could cross galaxies, had seen the stars themselves bend to her will, but nothing had moved her like this human sitting before her, exhausted yet alive, courageous yet vulnerable, and in that moment, she knew something she could never unlearn. Humans were not weak. Humans were not fragile in the way her people thought. They endured in ways her people had forgotten. They carried heart and fire and hope inside them, even when the world tried to break them. Daniel let out a low groan. collapsing fully onto the floor, limbs splayed. His body trembled, but his eyes, though red and exhausted, burned with life. He had faced the storm and survived. Kailery pressed her hands against the glass again, whispering softly, "You are extraordinary. You have endured what none of my people could endure, and you are human." Daniel smiled faintly, exhaustion mingling with relief. "Guess humans do have something special." Kailery's chest ached. She wanted to tell him everything. About her people, about the stars, about the emptiness she had felt for centuries. But for now she simply nodded. "You have survived," she whispered. "And for that, you have my respect, my admiration, my gratitude." Daniel looked at her, faint smile still on his lips. "Then, maybe this test wasn't just yours, maybe it was ours." Kailery's tears fell freely now. The chamber, silent and empty, held two beings bound by endurance, courage, and a fragile understanding. She had asked for truth. She had been given it. And it was more beautiful, more human, more alive than she could have imagined. The chamber was quiet now, still, and soft with the dim glow of residual energy. Daniel lay on the floor, exhausted beyond measure, yet somehow alive, burning with a small, stubborn fire that refused to fade. His chest rose and fell in ragged breaths, his limbs trembling, his mind still echoing with the memory storm. Kailery hovered beside the barrier, watching him with eyes wide and luminous. She felt emotions she had not allowed herself to feel in centuries. Awe, admiration, worry, and something far deeper. A connection she could not explain. Humans were fragile, her people said, yet here was one human, broken and bleeding, who had endured more than any Illyri could imagine. She stepped closer to the barrier, whispering softly, "Daniel, you have done more than endure. You have changed something inside me, something I thought was gone forever." Daniel lifted his head weakly, sweat and tears streaking his face. His lips curved into a faint, tired smile. "Then I guess that's something, huh?" Kailery's voice trembled. "Something more than you can imagine. You've reminded me of life, of hope, of fire, of what it means to truly endure." He tried to sit upright, but his body refused. Kailery watched him struggle and wished she could step through the barrier, hold him, comfort him. But rules of her people forbade it. Touching a human in this context would be forbidden, dangerous, even sacrilegious, and yet she could not stop her heart from aching. "You are extraordinary, Daniel," she whispered, her voice breaking, not because of strength or skill, but because of courage. Because of heart, because, even when everything tried to break you, you refused to give up. Daniel swallowed hard, blinking through exhaustion. "I never thought I'd be called extraordinary by someone like you." He tried to laugh, but it came out as a choked gasp. You really mean that?" "Yes," Kailery said, soft and steady. "More than anything." The silence stretched between them, filled with something neither could name. Time seemed suspended. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, yet here, inside this chamber, there was warmth, fragile but real. Daniel tried to rise again, leaning on his arms. "So, what now?" he asked quietly, voice hoarse. Do I go back? Pretend like nothing happened?" Kailery shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. "Nothing will ever be the same again. You have shown me something my people cannot understand. Something human. Something alive, and I cannot forget it, nor can I leave it behind." He blinked, exhaustion and confusion mixing on his face. "You mean you want me to stay?" Her lips trembled as she nodded. "Stay if you wish. Learn with me. Teach me what it means to endure. Not like my people, but like your kind. Show me how to live fully with heart, with courage, with hope." Daniel hesitated. He had never been someone others relied on. He had lived his life quietly, surviving, enduring, never imagining that anyone, let alone an alien brilliant being, would see him as extraordinary. Yet here he was, offered a place among the stars, not as a worker, not as a test subject, but as a teacher, a companion, someone who mattered. Finally he nodded, faint smile spreading slowly across his bloodied, exhausted face. "Then let's do it," he whispered. "Let's see how far humans can go." Kailery felt a warmth bloom inside her chest, brighter than any star outside the station. Her species had mastered the void, bent energy, built starships capable of crossing galaxies, but none of that compared to this moment. The life of a human, ordinary by every measure, had touched her in ways the stars themselves could not. "I think I understand now." Daniel said softly, leaning back against the cool floor. You wanted to test me, but maybe you were testing yourself too. Keelary nodded, tears slipping freely now. Yes, she whispered. I needed to see what your kind carries, and I found something my people no longer possess, fire, heart, life. Daniel reached a hand toward the barrier, as if he could somehow touch her. I don't know if I can ever repay you for this. For seeing me. For letting me live, really live. Keelary's voice trembled with emotion. You do not need to repay me. You've already given me everything. Courage, hope, life itself. They stared at each other. One human, one alien, connected by something that went beyond species, beyond rules, beyond the stars. In the quiet chamber, the vast universe outside seemed distant, irrelevant. Here there was trust, understanding, and the fragile seed of something extraordinary. Finally, Keelary whispered, We will leave the chamber soon, but promise me, you will carry this fire with you. Always. Daniel nodded. I promise. The chamber's lights dimmed further, the last echoes of the memory storm fading into nothing. Daniel rose slowly, wobbly but alive, his body aching with exhaustion, yet his spirit unbroken. Keelary stepped back, her glowing eyes watching him, feeling something she had never felt before, awe for the human spirit, admiration for life itself, and a quiet, fierce hope that together they could endure more than any starship, any galaxy.
Any trial could throw at them. The dock outside waited.
The stars waited. The universe stretched vast and endless before them. And for the first time, Daniel felt not fear, not doubt, but a blazing certainty. He could face whatever came next. Keelary extended her hand, not to touch, but as an offering. Come, she said softly. The stars are not ours alone, but together we can go farther than either of us imagined. Daniel took a deep breath, letting the exhaustion wash over him, and then nodded.